The 2008 Alabama Farm of Distinction competition featured 6 outstanding farms from across the state. These operations are judged on their management, conservation, and environmental practices, as well as the general overall aesthetic appearance of the farm. The Alabama Farm City Committee sponsors the Farm of Distinction program with the purpose of encouraging and fostering the development and retention of attractive farms and promoting a better relationship between rural and urban people. There were nominees from each of 5 geographic districts across Alabama and 1 from the state at large. Judges reviewed the 6 applications and then personally visited each of the farms before making a decision. Judges were Dr. Gaines Smith, Director of the Alabama Cooperative Extension System; Dr. LaVon Johnson, retired head of Ag Economics and Sociology at Auburn University; and Paul Till, Chairman of the Alabama Farm City Committee. Here are this year's Farm of Distinction District winners. Tucked into the Appalachian foothills of southeast Madison County, one would think Butler & Son Farm in New Hope would be insulated from the pressures of development just across the mountain in Huntsville. But that's not the case. In the past 10 years, the family has lost 200 acres of rented land to development and is constantly contending with traffic, trespassers, and soaring land values, all of which make farming more difficult. Fortunately, the Butlers have a long history of adapting to change. As the 4th generation to farm the same land since the 1870s, Charles has seen his family transition from a cattle feeding operation to a farrow-to-finish hog farm to row crops. Along the way, the family also dabbled in fruit production, but today cattle, cotton, and grains are the family's mainstays. Although the drought that parched Alabama in 2007 forced the family to sell about 45 cows, they still have a 75-cow commercial beef herd of mainly Red Angus and Simmental crossed cows. This year, they also have 500 acres of wheat and expect to plant 500 acres of cotton, 400 to 500 acres of corn, and 1,000 acres of soybeans. Their decision to plant more soybeans was motivated by skyrocketing fertilizer and diesel fuel costs, which also played a part in their move to conservation tillage almost a decade ago.
We've used conservation tillage since I've been back, and even a little bit longer. My dad bought a no-till planter probably in the early 70s, but we usually no-till beans after wheat, double crop, and in '99, we made the decision to go all the way with it. The planter technology was good enough that we could do it, plus the Roundup Ready, the herbicides were so much better than they were back in the 70s that we could do it and get by with it. Of course, the fact you don't have to use near the fuel and have as much equipment around has been a real plus. And down in these valleys, low, wet land, when you don't till it, you can usually get back on it a lot quicker. So we've had more days that we could do things.
Charles Butler's commitment to improving soil and water quality, however, is not limited to his own farm. He's also a former president of the Alabama Association of Conservation Districts and currently serves on the State Soil and Water Conservation Committee. Butler farms with his father, John Ed, and 2 sons, Sam and Matt. His wife, Donna, is a Spanish teacher in neighboring Jackson County. That's Butler & Son Farm in Madison County. Unlike many farmers, Lamar and Felicia Dewberry of Clay County won't harvest their crop this fall. But the seeds they've planted will continue to yield dividends for years and even generations to come. A retired agri-science teacher, Lamar already is seeing the fruits of his labor as the young men and women he mentored achieve success in their own careers. But after more than 2 decades of coaching young people in events like forestry judging and livestock shows, the self-proclaimed country boy also is now seeing his treasure forest and tree farm produce valuable timber, critical wildlife habitat, and priceless beauty. For the Dewberrys, it all started shortly after Lamar graduated from Auburn University and accepted a job with the Clay County Board of Education. Because he loved agriculture and believed one should practice what they teach, he bought a small herd of registered Simmental cattle. After about 7 years, however, he decided to change directions with the farm so he could devote more time to his work at school. 2 decades later, Dewberry land spans 730 acres, made up of loblolly and longleaf pines, hardwoods, and more than 20 acres of wildlife openings. A certified tree farm and treasure forest, the operation has won numerous awards for wildlife management and environmental stewardship. The Dewberrys manage their land for what Lamar calls the twin crops of modern forest management, timber, and wildlife. But it's Lamar's commitment to protecting the water and reducing soil erosion in the rolling hills of Clay County that makes his farm distinctive.
I always mark the SMZs when we have a timber harvest. I go in and I get back at least 50 feet on each side of the stream, sometimes further according to how steep the land is there next to the stream, and we scatter that as wide as we do to protect. Now, we could probably allow some harvesting in that SMZ, but we don't allow any. 2 reasons. One, if there's not going to be any runoff in that stream if we don't get within 50 feet of that stream. And number 2, it serves as a wildlife corridor for wildlife in the area, and it's a beautiful area. Even after you go in, and if you completely harvest an area, you go into that stand and you still have these huge yellow poplars down there, and the leaves on the ground and the growth, and it helps with the aesthetics of the property also.
Lamar is president of the Clay County Farmers Federation, and Felicia is a licensed realtor. They're members of the Lineville Baptist Church and have 2 children, Nathan, who's 26, and Abby, who's 25. That's Dewberry Lands in Clay County. John and Mandy Newman of Chambers County are living a dream, one that took root in the vision of John's father, and that's blossomed into a thriving greenhouse operation that's known throughout East Alabama and West Georgia for its high-quality plants. A 3rd-generation family farm, John's grandfather started a row crop operation in 1928 before building a dairy barn in 1947. 10 years later, John's father diversified into poultry with the addition of laying houses. But in 1971, he laid the foundation for Newman's Plant Farm when he built greenhouses to grow tomato plants for the family's wholesale produce business. The Newmans continued to grow tomatoes until 1989 when they transitioned to collards. But by 2000, labor shortages forced the family to once again adapt, and the commercial greenhouse operation was born. Today, the Newmans have 18,000 square feet of greenhouses where they grow hanging baskets, bedding plants, and a variety of vegetable plants, flowers, and foliage. Although the Newmans sell some plants at their home, the majority of their business is sold wholesale through 20 Piggly Wiggly grocery stores and 25 independent garden centers. In recent years, the biggest challenge for the Newmans has been energy costs. Not only are they spending more for the 25,000 gallons of propane they use each winter, but it's also costing more to ship containers and plant material in from out of state. John hopes to reduce some of his costs by installing a boiler that burns biomass in addition to propane. As for the future, John says he'd like to build an additional 8,000 to 10,000 square feet of greenhouses. But his main goal is to carry on the tradition of quality his father established before he passed away in 2005.
We shoot for quality. We try not to haul nothing out until it's perfect. That's hard to do now. I'm not going to say everything we sell is, but that's the goal here, is quality and not quantity. I try to utilize my space. If it ain't got something growing there, it's costing you money to be empty. So we try to fill every area and every corner, and it's just something that I grew up with. You know, it's just doing it right, and we try our best.
John and Mandy are members of the Penton Church of God, and he's active in the Union Hill Volunteer Fire Department. The couple has 3 daughters, Sammy Jo, who's 14, Grace, who's 7, and Morgan, who's 18 months. And they're expecting a son, John Spencer, in May. That's Newman's Plant Farm in Chambers County. Pike County farmer Mike Dubose built his diversified poultry, cattle, and row crop operation from scratch. But he's quick to give credit to those who helped him along the way. And he's equally committed to helping other young farmers who need advice or a helping hand. A third-generation farmer, Mike's father was killed in an accident when Mike was just a year old. So the young man grew up following in his grandfather's footsteps. It was that experience that sparked Mike's interest in farming. More than 30 years later, DeVos Farm spans 1,000 acres and includes 500 acres of peanuts, 350 acres of wheat, and 150 acres of corn. He also has a 75-cow commercial beef herd and 4 poultry houses where he raises more than 500,000 broilers a year for Keystone Equity Group. Drought and skyrocketing production costs have taken a toll on DeVos Farms. Mike says the family has coped by cutting costs and better utilizing their resources, including using poultry litter for fertilizer and peanut shells for poultry house bedding.
I would have never dreamed of diesel fuel having a major impact on my farming operation, but it has. And we're doing some things to cut back, but there's only so much cut back you can do on the farm as far as diesel fuel. Fertilizer, we're using more and more poultry litter. Much as we can get, we're using to try to avoid using commercial fertilizer. We have to use a little bit of commercial nitrogen on the hay fields and on the wheat and the corn, but we're just trying to use what we got when we can, and poultry litter is a good source of fertilizer. We don't have a source for diesel fuel except from the distributor, so that's sort of tough, especially when you write the check.
Mike also has made the most of his farm's resources by implementing a conservation plan that's included installing miles of drainage tiles and the construction of multiple ponds to catch runoff and store water for irrigation. An active member of the Pike County Cattlemen's Association, Pike County Farmers Federation, and Pike County Farmers Co-op, Mike also serves as a deacon at the First Baptist Church in Troy. He and his wife Mary have a 19-year-old son, Jake, and a 16-year-old daughter, Morgan. That's DuBose Farms in Pike County. For more than 30 years, Donnie and Norma Waters fed their family and put their kids through school by raising hogs in a farrow-to-finish operation. But since 1998, the Waterses have found a new way to bring home the bacon by feeding the South's growing appetite for ornamental nursery plants. Now, that's not to say the family has completely gone green, but they now complement their 750 acres of row crops with a 100-acre nursery that's still growing. Donnie, who spearheads the row crop operation with his oldest son, Timmy, says the family maximizes yields and controls costs by rotating their crops. The rotation of corn, brown top millet, and peanuts, followed by a double crop of wheat and soybeans, has produced an average corn yield of 129 bushels per acre in recent years, as well as 46 bushel soybeans, 71 bushel wheat, and almost 3,200 pound peanuts. A true family farm, the four-way partnership includes Donnie and Norma and their 3 sons and daughters-in-law, Timmy and Sandra, Tony and Lisa, and Terry and Anita. Tony serves as president of the nursery operation, Lisa is the production manager there, and Terry works in both phases of the family business. But there might not be a family business had it not been for the nursery operation. Low hog prices in the late 90s were making it difficult to remain profitable, but without livestock to supplement the row crops, Donnie feared he wouldn't be able to pass the farm on to his sons. The answer came from Tony, who had gained valuable experience working at nearby Flowerwood Nursery, which specializes in azaleas and other small plants. To avoid competing with Flowerwood, the Waterses decided to develop their own nursery centered around trees and larger shrubs, some in containers as large as 200 gallons. Since making the leap from hogs to ornamentals, the family has seen their business gradually expand. But Donnie says there have been unique challenges along the way.
The biggest issue we have right now is labor. If they was to come in here and start really hammering down on our migrant workers, it would probably shut us down. That's just the truth of it. Nobody else wants to do this kind of job. The white boys, even my grandchildren, they don't want to do it, and I don't blame them. But the Mexicans are good at it. They work good, they show up, and they don't have to have, we pay well and we pay taxes on all of it. But it still looks like that's going to be the biggest issue. Worse than water, everything else.
The Waters are active in the Baldwin County Farmers Federation and the Alabama Farmers Federation State Greenhouse Nursery and Sod Committee. That's Waters Farm and Nursery in Baldwin County. When Charlie Britton was a boy, he fell in love with the cool mountain creek that flows through his family's Madison County farm. It was here that generations of youngsters went skinny dipping, and where believers still come to be baptized in the crisp water. So for the past 40 years, Britton has made it his life's work to continue the farming way of life his family started here in the early 1800s, and preserve the land's natural resources for future generations. In order to achieve his goal, however, Britton first had to repurchase much of the original 200 acres his grandfather owned. Today, the farm not only includes most of that tract, which is located a mile from the Tennessee state line, but also a total of 420 acres that he acquired through 8 separate purchases. Flanked on all sides by rolling hills, Britton Acres Farm is a secluded sanctuary where cattle graze in lush pastures behind miles of pristine 4-plank fence. To protect the springs and creek that provide drinking water for both his cattle and his family home, Britton has installed concrete watering troughs and fencing to keep the cows out of the streams. Last year, however, the severe drought that scorched pastures throughout the state forced Britton to water from the creek and reduce his herd from 300 Angus and Charolais crossbrood cows to 232. Fortunately, Britton has installed cross fencing that allows him to rotate grazing among 18 pastures, and he strategically located ponds and watering troughs between pastures so he can better utilize his resources. Thoughtful planning like this has been a hallmark of Britton's operation and has allowed him to grow his operation from just a few cows to a full-time farming enterprise.
In 1967, I bought the farm from my dad. He sold it to me on the credit and he financed it for me interest-free. Me and my brother bought 6 calves together, 3 for me and 3 for him. Later that year, I bought his 3, which gave me 6. And then the next year, I found this real bad herd in Tennessee that I could afford to buy. They were in bad shape, and I bought them and brought them down here and kept them about 3 years. They had back surgery, so I had to sell out, except one, I couldn't catch her. She ran off. And then a couple years later, I called the Federal Stockyard and told them to send me 50 of the poorest calves they had, and it was in January, February, and one of them was so poor it couldn't get off the truck. And I took those 50 heifers and culled them that fall to 35, and I built my herd from those 35 culled heifers up to 300 brood cows.
Britton, who retired in 2002 from PPG in Huntsville, farms with his wife Vera. They have one daughter, Holly, and her husband, Dennis Bunfield. The Brittons worship at Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church. That's Britton Acres Farm in Madison County.